why India hasn't produced a big four yet. Why this US-India corridor cannot be as powerful as the US-Israel corridor. We haven't really harnessed the power of community. Without that happening, the US-India corridor would not become as powerful as the US-Israel.
I quite liked what Mr. Piyush Goyal said. We have too many D2C, e-commerce, all of that. We need more deep tech, we need more foundational work.
Entrepreneurs have done it even when the government was against them. Indian entrepreneurs have proven that they have huge amount of grit.
There's a reason why you chose the US-India corridor. What is it that you're trying to solve for vis-a-vis other VCs?
Our goal is between US-India corridor to produce the first $100 billion company.
Hi everyone, Prantik here, President of TIE Singapore. Welcome to another edition of TIE Talks. And today I have a very special guest. Normally he's on my seat. His name is Siddhartha Ahluwalia, Managing Partner at Neon Fund. And as many of you would know or would have seen him or have listened to his podcast, the Neon VC podcast is probably one of the best known podcasts in the VC segment. And I have the privilege of being on his seat and interviewing him and having a conversation with him. So showtime. Siddharth, welcome to Singapore and thank you for doing this with us.
Well, thank you so much, Prantik. Glad to exchange seats.
There's so many things to talk about your life, but I want to start about the podcast journey because I think safe to say you were amongst one of the early folks to launch this. What motivated you? What triggered? Give us the backstory.
2012, I formed my first company. So this was a SaaS solution in healthcare. We scaled that company for 5 years. 2017, we sold this company to Shiros. 1 year down the acquisition, me and my co-founder Nancy, we are also life partners, and we were looking what can we do next, as an entrepreneurs. And we thought, hey, we don't want to do anything related to healthcare. Yeah, right. So we thought, how do we learn about other things? So I thought, hey, my investors and I used to have impromptu sessions, on discussing various things in the world. So let me start with discussing them with them, and I'll probably record this conversation for my memory, and possibly, if Nancy finds it valuable, we'll share it on my LinkedIn and her LinkedIn. So we started recording on a 10,000 rupees or 200 SGD phone. After 3 or 4 of these, when we uploaded it on Google Drive, published it on LinkedIn, my friends from the US told, hey dude, great podcast. I thought I'm hearing this word for the first time. This is 2018.
From Google Drive files.
So that's how the journey started. I think learning and curiosity and a greater network kept us going.
It's fascinating you say this 2018. Google Drive, some interesting adoption from friends, and there you have begun. How many episodes so far? How many followers? Nearly 300,000?
Yeah. So we have 260,000 followers just on YouTube.
Right.
And same amount across all other platforms also, more than 500,000 followers, 5 million views a month, out of which 80% are India, 14% from California, 4% from Europe. So 400 episodes in the last 7 years.
From those early beginnings. Fantastic. And that also means you carried this journey through COVID, I suppose.
Yes.
And, we were just talking about this before the session started. Why do you think podcast as a medium has sort of taken off? And, you also mentioned the fact that you do this even when you travel overseas.
Yeah.
So give us a sense of, why do you think this medium is really picking up across genres? And, what happens when Siddhartha Ahluwalia travels overseas? How do you sort of keep up with that momentum?
How do we consume media or learn from other entrepreneurs was through media articles, right?
Correct.
And which were very shallow, right? They would be 3 to 4 paragraphs, and very bare minimum to learn from them. So I think what podcast offers is an unfiltered conversation for the listener. And that playbook, people can use in their own learnings, how to apply that in their own life, right? So I think that's very powerful. I use that because I use these podcasts to learn venture capital. My first 100 guests were VCs. So it was an excuse to get a mind of a VC.
Of course.
Right? So that's how, right? And a lot of folks have reached out back to me, right? Folks who got hired into VC firms, mostly between US and India and even Singapore, that you use Neon Show podcast for preparation of the interviews.
Beautiful.
Right? So that's why people listen to podcasts, right? And why this medium has become so powerful now, because, through this medium, you can absorb in n number of directions. I want to learn about venture capital, to switch to 20 VC or Neon Show, n number of podcasts in different direction, and I can pick and choose very carefully. Now with ChatGPT, I can just prompt it and think, whether this is interesting enough to spend my next 1 hour on. I think what video also as a medium has done is, like audio, you tend to tune off if you're not very carefully listening, but video offers a very interactive way, and with like such a high quality production, it's almost like a movie. So audience gets really tuned in for this 45 minutes or 1 hour.
Fabulous. Now, you mentioned the early guests were all VCs. So let's deep dive into how do you guys plan this podcast, right? So maybe let's talk about the audience or the guests that you have on your podcast, right? Is there a theme or a strategy every year that you all have? How do you reach? Why do people show up? Just give us a sense of how Nancy and you sort of plan this. Is it arbitrary, or is there like some strategic thinking every quarter, every year?
This is very close to my heart, what you spoke about. When I started my entrepreneurship journey, I always had this question of why this, US-India corridor cannot be as powerful as the US-Israel corridor.
Yeah.
Right? We have 50x larger scale, equal density of talent, right?
Yeah.
People who have worked in IT services and products for probably same amount of time as Israel, right? So we bucketed into 3 pillars. Obviously, I wanted to learn VC foremost.
Yeah.
So first 100 guests were all venture capitalists, Then our next 100 guests were entrepreneurs. And the scale that we achieved with the first 200 episodes was now policymakers, which the third leg that we wanted to get into, like what happened in India in the last 25 years since 1991,
Right.
since the economy got liberalized, right? Which every one of us is a benefactor of.
Yeah.
And what will happen in the next 25 years? And these policymakers share like complete, 360-degree view. Yeah. So very important for anybody, especially entrepreneurs, to know like what is happening at a macro level.
Sure. So
these 3 legs became the core of how we operate. So, every month we would try to get 1 venture capitalist, 1 or 2 entrepreneurs, and 1 policymaker.
beautiful. And let me sort of get to, Siddhartha Ahluwalia's motivations. Again, starting with the podcast, and we'll obviously talk a lot about your fund as well. Your top 3 favorite VC podcasts that you sort of seek inspiration from?
20 VC by Harry Stebbings,
Yeah.
Then, I listen to A16Z.
Of course.
Because they have like n number of topics, and it's done by legends like Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, right? And the third I listen to is Y Combinator. And to give globally a perspective in terms of numbers, Y Combinator is the most listened podcast by any VC firm.
Of course.
And they have been doing it for 15 years. We are very grateful that globally second number is Neon Show podcast in venture capital category.
Congrats for that.
Thank you. Third is A16Z, and fourth is 20 VC. So obviously, we have some scale advantage from India, but I keep on taking inspirations from these podcasts.
Yeah, that would mean a lot for the fact that you're between a Paul Graham and a A16Z.
So hopefully we can build the India-US corridor as strong so that on the investing side or on the entrepreneurship side, we can also call ourselves among the heavyweights.
I mean, surely this is the 7th year that you've done this, I'm sure, in that direction. Now tell me, of all the episodes that you've done, if you said there are 3 buckets that you have of people, which one would you count, not in terms of views, but in terms of meaningful conversations? One with a founder, one with a VC, one with a policymaker. If you had to sort of pick 3 that are close to your heart, it felt good for whatever reason, could you share?
Sure, absolutely. So let me start with one with policymaker. So we have recorded till now 4 episodes with Sanjeev Sanyal, who is economic advisor to the PM Narendra Modi. And he shares beautiful perspective on, let's say, for example, why India hasn't produced a big 4 yet.
Right.
Yeah. Then he also shares what's path to India becoming a $10 trillion economy. And he also shares nuances about ecosystem, like how, he was part of a machinery that started creating in India every year 5,000 patents would get approved, and now India is approving 1 lakh or 100,000 patents. So how India created that, and this is all fueling the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah.
My favorite episode on the VC side is with Ashu Garg. He's partner at Foundation Capital. We are also grateful that Tech Foundation is also an LP in Neon Fund.
Nice.
But what it inspires me is like Ashu being originally from India and same town as me, has made it a tier 2 or tier 3 town. Build a mark in Bay Area. He was the first investor in Databricks, like the new hyperscaler, like $100 billion company. First investor in Cohesity and many such other companies. So he's like being from Indian origin. His aspirations are no less than being the best, in the Bay Area. And the third, on the entrepreneur side, I've recorded with Jay Vijayan. He's founder of Techion. Earlier, he was CIO of Tesla. And he doesn't come from a IIT or IIM. He's from like a very humble background in Chennai, right? And he went to US at the age of 30. So as a software engineer in a, not like a Google or a Microsoft, but like a services company. So very inspirational journey.
Fascinating. You're sort of giving a nice airspace and coverage to people who have done actual work, may not be media darlings, so to speak, but you're bringing these stories to life. And I think Jay's story is an interesting one. Like you said, he's not your typical IIT, IIM, Google, Meta inspired story, but there's so much power to that. No, thanks for sharing. On the flip side, is there one thing that you feel that in the next decade, as the Neon VC podcast sort of scales up, the Neon show, what is it that you think you might have missed out and you want to improve or, take this to a different level? Again, beyond the numbers and the views, is there something that you feel that you could have done differently and now you want to do that in the next decade?
I think, we haven't really harnessed the power of community, not for the benefit of the podcast or the guest, right? But for the benefit of the ecosystem and how to accelerate it.
Right.
I think that part is yet to happen. And without that happening, the US-India corridor, would not become as powerful as the US-Israel. So I think next decade, we want to make this happen. Like, how can, let's say, Prantik get the best policymaker sitting in Singapore on Neon Show or any other platform like this?
Yeah. Right. So I think the internationalization of that Neon platform, that's very well said. And, switching gears to that theme of internationalization, now I want to touch upon the US-India corridor because like you said, that drives the podcast and of course the thesis of the fund. At what stage, I think, let's say when I was growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, I definitely took inspiration from the Indian services companies that, grew up from India. There was a whole saying, right? When you go to a SaaS Boomi event, etc. today, which is SaaS, but even the services that you either take labor resources or brain power from India, but you're servicing the US. At what point when you started the podcast and the fund, did this trigger to you that this is a corridor that needs to be scaled up and unlocked?
When I was building my company in 2012, like there was hardly anybody in the US that I could cold email to and say, hey, I need help. How can I take my CRM for healthcare to the US market? Everybody did it the hard way. And I think things started unlocking when, examples like Freshworks started happening more publicly. Platform like SaaS Boomi started hosting stories of Girish publicly. And then a community started shaping around it that, hey, this corridor, there's support on the US side also, that you can cold email from India and ask for help. And, probably even if you don't have money as an entrepreneur, you can stay at somebody's house.
Sure.
If you can just arrange a visa and fly there. And
so when you talk about this corridor, are you only talking about an Indian operator setting up in India, selling in US, or an Indian operator flying to US, setting up there, or an Indian origin person in the US setting up and scaling a business in the US? Give us a lens of what does the India-US corridor mean for you? How do you define it?
So, like, what do we mean by the India-US corridor? It means that, leveraging the power of India, which is obviously the manpower, the technology, and what we have built in the last 30 years through first services and then product, right? And harnessing that in the US market, which is, competing with the best of, like Salesforce, ServiceNow, HubSpot in the US market, right? And building solutions which are better than them, building go-to markets which are better than them, and having your core engine or the core product sitting in India. So that's what India-US corridor means. Companies have done it. There's a company called, Zoho, which everybody knows about for the longest period of time. They didn't have a US sales machinery.
That's right.
And they sold all, online through inbound or outbound channels. right? Then in case of Freshworks, what happened is like Girish didn't move to US for the longest period of time, and I think in the second half of the journey that he moved to the US as an entrepreneur. But it all started out of Chennai, and why the story is beautiful is it created 1,000 millionaires at time of IPO sitting out of Chennai. So imagine this corridor, if it produces 100 Freshworks, like it would give dreams to real, financial freedom too.
Yeah.
Like 100,000 people.
Beautifully put. I think, Sridhar and Girish's stories are inspiring at so many levels. In fact, I was thinking about Sridhar's story because when we were hosting the TIE Global Summit in 2023 in Singapore, it's only then that I got to know that, in fact, Sridhar's company, which is Zoho, was one of the first recipients of, again, all kinds of help from TIE Silicon Valley, which has existed since 92. And you're right. I think there are so many dynamics to be unlocked, be it staying at someone's house to access to investors, access to customers, partners. And, maybe this is at this juncture, want to get a sense of the thesis at the Neon Fund. Now you're on to third fund. You could have chosen different theses, but there's a reason why you chose, obviously starting with SaaS, maybe now AI, but the central aspect being the US-India corridor. So in your own words, how would you define the Neon Venture Capital Fund, and what is it that you're trying to solve for vis-a-vis other VCs?
Yeah. So our goal is, between US-India corridor to produce the first $100 billion company with, having, let's say, 1,000 engineers, hundreds of engineers sitting in India and GTM in the US. That's a big goal. And this company could be the Databricks from India. And we want to do it 100 times, at least, for creating $10 billion companies repeatedly. This might look very surprising today, but if you take a long lens of 20, 30 years and do it programmatically, what you have to unlock is creating 100 to 500 million ARR companies repeatedly and creating that kind of talent repeatedly. And that's our mission at Neon, right? Like, why cannot an OpenAI be built between this corridor? Why cannot an Anthropic or a Databricks, right? I think logically seems all right. It's just that nobody ever has done it. And I think once a founder is able to do it, and that's why, we are building it very strategically, where we say, 50% of our money goes to first-time founders, because they have uninhibited ambition, but 50% strategically goes to second-time founders who are financially retired from their last exit,
Sure.
Be it public, taking company public, or M&A, because we believe that these are the founders who will give it all and who have the same kind of a mission. Why cannot, we produce $100 billion company?
Right. So I get the big, hairy, audacious goal there. Two questions that came to my mind. One is to do, and maybe let's start with the second time or the third time founder.
Yeah.
From your experience, and I know you've backed a few, including some of our friends from Singapore and India, how do you see the hunger? If someone's financially retired, what are the other components of hunger that you might have seen that drives him or her?
Starting a company, you have been an entrepreneur, it's almost like going through hell for the first few years, because everything that can go wrong goes wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're first time or second time. Your past credentials don't matter.
Yeah.
Right. So if anybody is ready to go through that grind again, and after, I think, a certain zero, money doesn't matter. Right. And I've not seen the second or third time entrepreneurs race in Ferrari. They'll still, I think, take a 20,000 SGD or 30,000 SGD car. Right.
Yeah.
So why are they doing it? I think first reason is they want to push themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That, hey, last time I sold a company maybe for 200 million, but that journey was unfinished.
Yeah.
Let me now, I have all the resources, and now I can dedicate my next 20 years to building what can be my life's work. So, and they are artists in their own sense. Right. And the other thing is that, for these people who are able to go this journey again, they know all the things that can go wrong. And that's why they take it as a 10 to 20 year journey, and they're not taking any shortcuts in this time, and they're careful in their choices.
Got it. So there is an ambition for legacy. They've obviously been there, done that.
Yeah.
And I think your proxies, if they're restarting that painful journey, that's a good enough metric. On the other side, I think that's a brilliant point to make. Why hasn't India like you said, made the Big Four or made any of these foundation LLM questions. It reminded me of an episode that I saw. I think you recorded recently with Mr. Ganesh, where he spoke about building for the core, the roti kapda makan, entertainment, education, healthcare. So whilst I loved that episode, I loved what he was saying. I mean, he's a man who's built it himself and he's enabled others to build it. But that also brought about the question that we've, for the longest time, built it for America. We have done services. But what is your take when you're looking at some of these first-time founders with that ambition of building 50 to 100 to $200 million revenue companies? What will it take for Indian founders to build foundational IP-led companies, be it at the LLM levels or anything else?
So few things, if we imagine, if these founders are able to build technology which are, core monetization led, then they start going, let's say, doing forward integration and backward integration. Which example it means, if a founder has mastered at an application, AI at application layer, then they would start venturing into the model layer also, because then they would have the resources, to build it backwards at the model layer. Similarly, once, if they have mastered the model layer, then they would start going into the infra layer. So I think it's a function of time and not if. So it's a function of when, right? Once somebody from India, a founder from India, reaches like 500, 600 million in annual revenues through core product IP, then they would start solving these problems. And our role is to become the accelerator and provide them all the ecosystem, all the support that can possible, that if it would take them 10 years, how can we make that happen in 5 years? And because if they can do in 5 years, they will become example to hundreds of others that this is possible.
Right.
You don't leave all the hard problems for Sam Altman to solve.
So I'm hearing that, it's a matter of when and not if. It's a matter of as the country progresses. In your lens, especially in your conversations with policymakers, are you seeing that the government is taking cognizance of this? If so, what are they doing? Because, there was that whole controversial thing about, which I thought I quite liked with what Mr. Piyush Goyal said, that, I think we have too many D2C, e-commerce, all of that. Whilst, again, any business, any dhanda is good, I respect it. But we need more deep tech, we need more foundational work. I thought it was a very brave statement. But from your lens, your conversations, are you seeing the government do something about this to accelerate and not just rely on private sector VCs like you?
So if you see India historically in the last 30 years, entrepreneurs have done it, even when the government was against them, even when there was no government support. And today, obviously, there's a lot of government support. So I think all the companies like Infosys, Wipro, they got created at a time when there was zero government support, and the rupee to dollar was like completely, could go crazy. Like one day it was 40, the other day was 80. So they lived in those uncertain times.
Yeah.
Right. So I think Indian entrepreneurs have proven that they have huge amount of grit. Right. So now if there is, you talk about government support. So if there is government support, I think it has to be a nature where of the American nature. I'm not saying just copy the US, but where's this freedom first to innovate and then regulate. And to the earlier statement, India is building too many startups in basic things. But I believe that first, the entrepreneurs who achieve financial freedom or achieve scale in basic things, for example, Urban Company just went IPO, right? Swiggy went, Zomato went IPO. So these are the entrepreneurs. Then they would start solving hard problems. Like, for example, Dipinder Goyal from Zomato. He is now working on civil aviation.
That's right.
So I think financial freedom and knowing that resources are unlimited, that kind of freedom we have to give to our entrepreneurs, because I think that is an internalization that's need to happen in our entrepreneurs as well. Like the founder of Anduril, he sold his previous company, to Facebook, right? And then he started working on the hardest of defense tech problems. So once our entrepreneurs realize that there's no resource constraint and they have to feel it, it can't be like theory.
Yeah.
They have to feel it. They made it. Maybe it requires taking a company public. Then they can chase the hardest problems in the world.
Nice. So sounds like even for entrepreneurs, there is their own Maslow's hierarchy that once your basic roti kapda makan is sorted, once you have got some runs on the board in your first innings, there's an evolution, right? Now let's get to your portfolio and your journey as a VC. I want to touch upon 2-3 things. I'll start with the fact that when you started Fund One, SaaS obviously was massive. With this advent of AI between Fund One to where you are today, what's the change are you seeing? Is SaaS? I just heard a YC podcast over the weekend which says SaaS is dead or will die. There are hundreds of articles around that. Your lens on SaaS versus AI, is there a place for SaaS, or is it you're not in the current avatar, you're not backing SaaS companies anymore? It's all around deep tech and AI.
At Neon, because I'd been an entrepreneur, I believed in thinking for first principles, in even solving what is SaaS from first principles. So it's a way to monetize a software through subscription. I think the previous 25 years, when SaaS replaced on-prem. And if you talk to the APJ leaders who are sitting in Singapore for 30-35 years across companies like HP, NetApp, Nutanix, they don't talk of SaaS or they don't talk of ARR. They talk of total contracted value. Right. And in their age, they used to sell that like 200 million of total contracted value. And they have seen that. I think at that point of time also, we were selling software 25 years ago in terms of, total contracted value over 4 years. And then they would divide the yearly revenue. And then it changed to a model where, it became more convenient for enterprises to adopt. You don't have to sign for 4 years. You can pay per month for a software as a subscription. I think now we are entering a phase where, software could become plug and play. So there would not be any yearly contracts. And with AI, you could pay per use, pay per token. And because on the underlying LLM, also you are paying per token basis. Right. So for the final application, you could do that, which would see like maybe 50x more adoption than the SaaS part. So ultimately, the layer that is getting consumed is software, and software is producing an outcome. That's why people are using software. So I don't, SaaS for me was a model which served a purpose for 20-25 years, right? And it will take probably a new form in 4-5 years. But, people who deliver great outcomes via software, will still flourish.
Well said. So I think in the first principles, it's still utilization of software to solve for productivity and cost gains. Second thing, given US-India corridor focus, you can't ignore, I suppose, what's happening at a geopolitical level, what's happening in the US domestic politics right now. How has that changed your thinking? If the visa situation changes or if there's tariffs on software, how have you baked those as risks into your model?
So we are constantly, investing in companies where at least one founder, like obviously of Indian origin, we back only Indian origin founder, could have a US passport and the others are sitting in India, right? So that they could build their GTM teams and there's less uncertainty, whether the visa would get revoked or not. And in that philosophy, we have followed from Fund One. Maybe we have taken a few exceptions where, the founder has a large exit. So for them, visa might not be an issue. So they start with O1. But what I think is it will change it. It is for the teams, or for a simple example. Now I'm hearing that the US visa for India, the cost would go up by $400. Right. So less you will spend your less number of resources to send to the US.
Correct.
Right. So I think on that scale, it will start impacting. But I feel that, entrepreneurs have always solved problems. So they would also be able to solve this going forward. And the current administration has a 3-year term left, or 3.5-year term left. We are talking about a 20-year journey of India-US corridor.
Fair enough. You're taking a long-term view and always likely to be short-term blips. The third is about the industry itself, right? Obviously, post-21, there's been a lot of talk about the funding winter, etc. India might have a different notion given the domestic situation. But I've been reading whether it's A16Z, whether it's Lightspeed, some funds in Singapore as well are taking this view that the VC industry also needs to change and evolve in the sense some of them are creating perpetual vehicles, some of them are creating PE-like sort of models. How is Neon VC evolving vis-a-vis these sort of developments from tier one VCs in the US especially?
So we treat fund size as a moral responsibility that if LPs are trusting us with their money in a 6 to 8 year window period, we need to show them, net 5 to 8x returns. And we have done it in our first few funds. So that, they could keep on trusting, because what we are taking is a 20-year view, and it requires, churning of money back to the LPs at a 5x or a 8x scale, so that they could trust us again for a longer period of time. I think what has our focus has been that. So this is like this is a extreme focus on DPI. And how do we do it? On how we have done it, we have taken 5 profitable exits from a fund, either through M&As or secondaries,
Right.
to make that happen, so that people don't get allured, that venture capital only offers paper money, there is no real money, right?
Yeah.
We have offered we have returned real money back to our LPs. I think that the larger funds, why they are taking the other form is because they realize that the entire game of wealth, if you have to say, there's 3 to 4 people that play a role. There's the public markets that play a role, and the people who manage money in the public markets. There is the money that VCs control at the larger level, let's say A16Z, Lightspeed, General Catalyst, right? And then there are investment bankers, and the fourth is RIAs,
Yeah.
registered investment advisor, all the wealth managers, and these wealth managers decide which VC to allocate how much money in.
Yeah.
And now, if you see the larger platforms, they have relationships, let's say, with the Zuckerberg family or the Bezos family. So they say, why do we need the RIA to still take the decision every 3 year or 4th year? Why can't we integrate everything into one category? Where our goal is, let's say, if we are taking every year $2 billion, we can also give exits of $2 billion. And what has happened in the US, the journey from, company formation to going public is unpredictable. Like, it's not like, because the companies are slowing down.
Yeah.
It's like companies are still private at $500 billion in valuation. And it's the founder's choice, because he has so much or she has so much liquidity to keep it private at 500. And so these funds want to keep their options open, right? I think how VC has evolved as an asset class, for these funds, it gives them the brand power to become all of 4 into one institution, and thereby eating other margin, like what Jeff Bezos said, right?
Yeah.
Your margin is my opportunity. They realize it.
Yeah, that's true indeed. And talking about the role of a VC in a founder's life, often there's been criticism, there's a term called smart money, but many have criticized that, especially the big funds have not added value. Vinod Khosla has gone on record to say that they probably add negative value. I want to get your view as you've been running the fund for a while now. If you have to give me examples of 2-3 ways that you use the word accelerate a founder's journey, what are the 2-3 ways that Nancy, you and the team have been adding value to the founders in your portfolio?
So let's talk in numbers, right? We have recorded podcasts with 400 guests till now. And to make it happen with 400 guests, we would have talked to 1,000 people of the same caliber and same accomplishments, right?
Sure.
For the final 400 podcasts to get out as a product, right? So we built that network between the US-India corridor. And once a podcast is recorded, we stay in touch with those guests, keep on connecting them with our founders or our LPs, right? Like, that's how we at least build the community on our side. So that network is accessible to Neon portfolio founders and even founders outside our portfolio. The goal is to build this ecosystem, not just, accelerate the Neon portfolio. So first is the network, right? Second is in enterprise software, at least the playbooks are repeatable, right? It's not like consumer, like today is a wave of Clubhouse, tomorrow it's Instagram. I think the way software gets bought at least Fortune 1000 or Fortune 2000, the playbooks are the same. How you engage your champions, which department do you sell to. So I think we have built those playbooks through our portfolio itself, right? One counterintuitive thing that we tell our portfolio is software get used online, but it get bought offline. It gets bought at dinners, it gets bought at roundtables, it gets bought at conferences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are the tribal network, tribal knowledge that we offer our portfolio, which if they would have done it themselves in 8 years, with us on the cap table, or without even us being on the cap table, they can do it in 4 or 5 years, I think.
Got it. So these elements of community, the playbooks or the connections and the guidance, I think that's been the value. And, tell me your top 2 favorite moments of a journey as a VC. What's your proudest moment?
So one is we recently exited a company called ZenDuty. We, let's say, entered at 6 million valuation in pre-seed or seed round, and the company at a nice revenue got bought by a P at 25 million plus valuation. So giving a 4x liquidity back to your LPs is like, they're seeing their cash. It's a real joy. Because
in what time horizon was that?
In 2 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Similarly, I think this another company called eBuyGo, where we were disciplined. A Series A investor bought us out at, we entered, let's say, 3 million. A Series A investor bought us out at 20 million. And even the founder, so our LPs, you could see real joy because they believed in the asset class. They were early believers, and they could see, that belief pay off. And also for the founders, liquidity creation for the founders. Like the founder, secured themselves, bought houses, put money aside for their kids' education. So now they could take more risk. Like earlier in the podcast, we talked about what enables people to take more risk, dream big. I think those are the really proud moments, when we have created liquidity for our founders or LP. And I think Neon is different in a way that from our fund also, we encourage our founders that, let's say if you go from 1 to 5 mil ARR without raising money, Neon offers you to take secondary, take money from us and use it for,
stability and security.
Do secondary.
Yeah.
Stabilize yourself so that, the journey from 5 to 50, you can do it more fearlessly. Because, if you understand a founder's mindset, their all eggs are in one basket. And as the company scales, it's natural for a human to be fearful of that basket and try to protect that basket.
Of course. When I was thinking about your journey, the other thing I wanted to tap into your mind was you've had so many conversations, right? About India-US corridor, Indian founders, policymakers, etc. In the recent past, from the conversations, if you were to, let's say you were talking to a non-Indian, someone in the US or Singapore, right? Someone who is not familiar with India, if you were to describe today's startup ecosystem to a Singaporean or a Chinese or an American layman, not even an investor, what are some 3-4 things you would say about the Indian startup ecosystem to them?
Yeah. So the Indian startup ecosystem globally follows, India's GDP. Let's say India today has like roughly $4 trillion of GDP, fourth globally as of today. And this at the current pace of growth, which is 6 to 8% annually, it's estimated within 10 to 15 years to grow to roughly $10 trillion. So this is an opportunity that global investors have. No other economy of this scale can offer this much growth in this period of time. And the example has been, US in the early 50s or China in the last 20 years. So investors have an opportunity that the largest democracy of the world, where obviously, politically stable country for the last 75 years since independence, is offering them to just ride with the wave. Right. So that's how I would describe the India opportunity and the India startup opportunity to these folks.
Got it. Couple of questions before we get to a rapid fire. One professional, one personal. India's Prime Minister Modi and Niti Aayog and team have put out the Viksit Bharat 2047 goal of being a developed nation, which is just about 2 decades away. And you spoke about your horizon being that. So if a Siddhartha Ahluwalia or a Neon fund has to paint a picture of a developed startup ecosystem in India by 2047, 2050, let's say, what would that look like? Is it going to look like the American or the Israeli ecosystem? Will it look very different? What would your dream be in 20 years, a developed startup ecosystem in India?
So I'll first say how India is different from the US. US in the current markets, a company requires to be 500 mil annual revenue to do a decent size IPO.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's reverse in India. A company, which is between 10 to 50 million dollars in revenue, profitable, can do a fantastic IPO. So I think by 2047, we would see 200 or 300 IPOs every year of companies like this, and this would, create so much wealth, build the capital markets of India, right? And the capital markets of India are also roughly today $4 trillion. It would take them to 15 to 20 trillion dollars in a similar predictable way.
Yeah.
On the other hand, companies on every sector, be it enterprise, be it consumer, would see a Zomato kind of journey where we'd see few companies crossing $100 billion in market cap with being profitable, right? So that would completely unlock a new set of founders, a new set of founding teams, right? More playbooks on how to do it repeatedly. So I think it will create a more balanced ecosystem on both the sides in public markets for India, and thereby wealth for all the participants, wealth for the nation.
Sounds good. Hopefully we get there. And do you see there's always a dichotomy between India and Bharat in the southern states where a lot of development has happened versus the northern Bimaru belt, as it's called? Do you see that the so to speak the Bimaru states or the Bharat at the heartland, do you see them being an active participant in the developed startup ecosystem?
So if you see the current delivery boys or girls or Uber drivers or Ola drivers in India, they all come from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar kind of belts, and they are like in millions right now, right? And we have seen them constantly earning 30 to 40,000 rupees. So it has changed complete trajectory of a family, right? So similarly, these folks would now go on to do better jobs, and it would be replaced by the next set. I think it will take like 10-15 years for like utter poverty in those states to get annihilated, when this upward mobility happens completely. But I think the effect of what is happening in India through e-commerce or quick commerce or at every scale, even through enterprise software, is being felt in every state, more quickly in southern states, obviously, but the second order effects, are being felt in the states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
Right. That brings me to my personal question. Earlier in the episode, you mentioned about Nancy and you beginning on this journey as co-founders, now your life partners. The good and the bad, the easy and the difficult of juggling both in 24 hours. Tell us more about the experience of how do you guys manage to balance that? You have a young kid as well. So how does that co-founder to life partner journey, how has that worked out?
I'll tell you the good part is, so we don't have to tell each other, how bad our day was, and we don't have that. You won't understand, right? So we don't have those kind of discussions. Each other understand because they are both in the same boat. On the bad thing is, it's very hard to switch off. Even on our holidays, we are taking investment committee meetings. So there is no switching off. That's the biggest disadvantage.
Okay. And before I get to the rapid fire, what's a day in the life of a VC of anyone, or in the case of Siddhartha Ahluwalia? What does your typical, let's say a Wednesday, third week of a month, typical Wednesday when you're not traveling, when you're in an office, what does it look like, a normal day?
So I would say, because I've been an entrepreneur and fortunate to be in that, no life different than an entrepreneur. It involves, raising money, trying to find the best startups to deploy money in, and you would do same set of calls in the same day. And the third part is, which is the most important part, being able to, being a 30-second WhatsApp message away from your founders. Like if they message you and they need you, you are there even at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. in the night. So, and I think that's why being a VC for me is as entrepreneurial as being a founder.
Fair enough. All right. We're at the fag end of our episode. I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions. Do your best to just answer based on gut feeling or what comes top of mind. Your favorite book?
Harry Potter.
Your favorite founder?
Vidit Atre from Misho.
Your favorite portfolio company?
Atomic Work.
Your favorite place for holiday?
Bali.
A favorite thing that you like to do just to yourself?
Go to Vipassana.
Your favorite moment with your child?
I think seeing each day grow him, and every moment away, I feel that I feel terrible. This is not going to happen again.
A favorite non-VC podcast?
How I built this.
If Siddhartha Ahluwalia was not a VC in an alternate life, alternate career, what would your life look like?
I think always a founder in one or the other sense. If there was no tech, then I would have been somebody creating a house but always creating things from scratch.
A thing that worries you?
The global macro uncertainty. Where are we heading?
Siddhartha Ahluwalia in 2030.
More fun, more responsibility with founders, investing in more companies, being closer to the goal of seeing the first $100 billion company getting created out of India. Right. So I think more closer to our goals.
When I say Singapore, what comes to mind?
I think stability.
And my last rapid fire question is, from your portfolio, if you were to say which one or two companies is likely to get there fastest to that vision of yours, what would you say based on your current portfolio?
I think we have two companies in that. Like one company is called Merlin. They're building ERP for construction. And the other company is called Binomial. They help remove hallucination from the drug discovery process.
Fabulous. Hope I can do many more episodes on specific verticals, but this has given our audience and myself so much to chew on. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Wish you all the very best, because as you rightly said, you're sort of fueling the dreams of hundreds of, if not thousands of people from India and Bharat. Wish you all the best for that. But you're also sort of changing the narrative. Again, like I said, it's amazing to see what you're doing by just bringing some of these narratives out, whether it's Jay's story or whether it's stories of so many policymakers. Thank you for being you. Thank you for doing what you do, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Prantik. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of another TIE Talks episode. You can watch this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast or videocast from. Do sort of think about, what each of these conversations mean for you. At TIE, our role is to be a catalyst in an entrepreneur's journey. Entrepreneurship, as many of you would know, is a lonely journey, but sometimes these conversations could reinforce your beliefs. Sometimes they could open your mind to new ideas or change your perspective on something. Sometimes this could become conversation starters with your fellow peers, your investors, or your board. However it may be, hopefully this has been useful. Do watch out and see you next time. Thank you.